Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm bringing to you all the disappointing books that I read in 2023. I have a total of 10 books here, which is a big number if you ask me, because in the past years, I don't remember being disappointed by such a big number of books. I'll not say that all of these books are utterly bad in any way. There are a few which are bad and I will say them as such when I talk about those particular books. But apart from that, in general, all of these books were disappointing for me because they did not meet the expectations that I had. And sometimes it also felt like the blurbs and the synopsis for the books set me up for disappointment in some way. So without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. I'm going to start from January and progress on until December. And I'll not be mentioning the months during which I read these books because it will confuse me. So the first book in this list is The Last Phone Call from Heaven by Mitch Albom, which is one of his fiction books. Now, first I thought that this would be kind of a non-fiction book which he writes like this, and he uses some kind of analogies in order to explain the things that he's trying to tell to the readers. But this book was not at all like that. There is this small town in the US where some people out of nowhere start getting phone calls from the people who are actually dead in their lives. And these people are also not just some random person whom the person getting the call does not know. They are usually very closely related, and the conversations that these dead people have with the people who are actually living in this town is also quite different. It starts out small and just becomes like a huge phenomenon inside the small town which puts it on the map. But as a whole, it just felt like most of the things that the author did here set me up for disappointment towards the end because I just hated the ending of this book so much. Now, I'm not that kind of person who hates a book just because it has a bad ending, but sometimes a bad ending can spoil the rest of the book completely for me. This was one such book and I did not expect such kind of a story from a person like Mitch Albom because all of the other books that I've read by him so far have been very inspirational and motivational for me. So I need to say this was quite disappointing. And next we have a book which I haven't even dreamt of putting into this list, and especially any book by this author could not have been thought by me to end up in a disappointing books list. But ultimately this ended up happening, and the book is Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare, which is the last and final book inside the Last Hour series. I can say that I was not a huge fan of the series ever since the beginning itself. The first book was quite weak and the second book was better compared to the first book, and this third book of all the three is the worst in my personal opinion. While I read the book first, I just rated it 5 stars because I just love Cassandra Clare's writing and I love this Shadow Hunter world a lot. More than anything, I just dig the characters that she writes inside her books. They are all trashy YA novels, I can understand that, but they are also very deeply emotional and have a ton of representation that is done properly by the author and not just for the sake of having them in order to draw on a particular kind of audience. Having said that, this book is ultimately stretched out in order to just make it big so that it feels like an ending for the series. But as a whole, this entire series was quite disappointing for me. If you're someone who likes books that happen in nice aesthetically pleasing settings, you can definitely go forward and read the series because of all the Shadowhunter books that are out there, the Last Stars books are the ones which have the most beautiful setups because she has built the world really beautiful in all these three books. I just want to make this comparison in order to make you understand how good the aesthetics of the series is. It's far better compared to the Infernal Devices which happens before the series in the timeline of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Despite all that, I did not like this. I rated it 3 stars ultimately, and seriously, I did not expect this to end here. Next we have a sci-fi book which has a super cool premise, and it is Snakeskins by Tim Major. I bought this book because it was available at a very cheap price for one day, and I should say that the premise of the book sounds super interesting. I'll just explain it to you. Now, there are these particular kind of people called these snakeskins in this world, which is a futuristic version of our own world. And these people called these snakeskins have this particular ability to shed their skin every few years. And once their skin is shed, that skin develops into a clone or duplicate of the person who shed the skin. And the number of snakeskins in the world is not as big as we'd expect them to be. They are very meager in their count. And it's not like the number of snakeskins that can be produced by one such person is limited in any way. It is very different for each and every person, and those snakeskins can live from a few seconds to a few years in their lifespan. Our main character here ends up being one of those people who creates her own snakeskin because she has that ability to from her mom. It starts out pretty strong, but after that, this cool ability that can be utilized in multiple ways even for the plot was not that well utilized by the author here. It just turned into a mystery of some sort, and instead of giving us more of this particular power which draws us into the book, the author goes on experimenting and exploring that mystery plot, which is not that great personally for me. So it drew me in, showing that particular trait of the book which sounded interesting and did not expand on it further. I rated this one 4 stars, but it was definitely not something that I expected it to be. The next one is a self-help book, and this one was also something which I had very high hopes for, but ultimately it turned out a book not just for me but for any Indian out there who eats a proper Indian diet. And the book is The Gut by Payal Kothari, in which the author talks about gut health and what all we are doing wrong about it and what all we can inculcate and include in our daily life in order to make our gut better, in turn making the entirety of our body better itself. It mainly focuses on the physical aspects of health, and as such, I'll not say there is anything wrong about this book, but being an Indian book, I thought that it would cater to the needs of an Indian audience more than that of a Western audience. For example, if you're a person who has a major part of your diet that is based on Western cuisine, you can definitely go forward and read this book. It will be highly beneficial for you. But if you're someone who eats predominantly Indian food like me, no matter what kind of Indian food it is, South Indian, North Indian, anything, I can easily say you need not read this book in your life. Because ultimately I got nothing useful out of this, because the author opens up the book saying that it will be perfect for every person out there who is eating any kind of diet, especially us stressed Indians right now. But the diet that she talks about here does not have anything that is whole food at all, which is mainly what our Indian cuisine is made of. So this was quite unhelpful. I rated it 4 stars though, because it can help people who are used to that kind of a diet. But if you are a person who eats a proper Indian diet, you don't need this book. The next one is probably the worst written book of all that I've read in 2023, and I did not expect this book to be this bad, okay? I've heard that it is bad, but this was another level of bad than I expected it to be, and it is The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. It has been sitting on my shelf for nearly 5 years now, and I finally picked it up because I wanted to finish the book at last. I even got this for a great deal on Amazon those 5 years back for just 250 rupees or something, and the quality of the book is great, okay? But other than that, there is nothing good about this book at all. The basic plot of the book is that there is this person who is in a high-ranking position inside the city's council where the story is taking place. But unfortunately, he ends up being dead because of a health condition. And in order to fill his office, another person has to be elected. The vacancy that is created by his death is the actual vacancy that is talked about in the title of the book. And there is also a series adaptation of this one. And I don't know what made people pick this up into become an adaptation, because this was totally boring from page 1 to the last. More than a huge book or an adult book, it just felt like J.K. Rowling was tired of writing children's books, especially Harry Potter, and I can understand it could have been so much stressful in order to complete that 7th book for her. And it felt like after finishing that 7th book, she just wanted to cuss a lot, she wanted to say all kinds of profanities and put all those things inside this book to be talked by characters. This felt like a huge pile of trash after I finished reading it, and it was much worse than I expected it to be. The next one is an Indian YA fantasy book. And if you've been following my channel for the second half of the year, you easily know what this book is, because it just disappointed the hell out of me. I had really high expectations for it, and the reviews for it were very positive all over the places. And I just can't believe how this book became a national bestseller, okay? And it is Samsara Enter the Valley of the Gods by Sakshankar. I even made a mean reel talking about this book in specific, but I did not have the heart to put it out in the world because I don't want to spread negativity, so I just deleted that video from my channel. It was not even published, so you might not have seen it. But I have an entire review of this book, because this was the first or second book, if I'm not wrong, which I picked up for my book club, which I started in the second half of the year again. The basic plot of this book is that there is this young boy named Aman, who's picked up from his home in Delhi and dropped into the wilderness in the Himalayas, where there is this particular tribe of people who try to bring out this chosen one from the 10 or 12 people who abduct from their lives and just put into this area. It just felt like a whole load of kidnapping done to select a chosen one who's not even sure about themselves to save the world as a whole. It was super slow, there was no character growth, there was no character development, and each and every character here just felt very unnecessary for me. Please watch my review and discussion video if you have read the book, or if you're okay with listening to spoilers, because this is not good, and I cannot believe that this is a national bestseller, because except for one element of the book which comes under the magic system or the world building, nothing else about this book was good for me. Even the writing was very immature, and for a book that has sold so many copies, especially in India, the quality in which it is written and the quality in which it is made as a story itself is very low. There are going to be 2 sequels for this one also. I cannot imagine how bad they will be. But I think I will try at least for the second book because I want to give this author a chance because this is the first book by the author also. But at the end of the day, this was the most disappointing of all the books that I read in 2023. Next, we have a Murakami book which I read in 2023. I think I read 2 of his books this year, and of the 2, one was a non-fiction which I liked and the other is this fiction which I did not end up liking. I read one Murakami in 2022 which ended up being one of my favorites of that year, but this was an unlucky pick for me, and it is Killing Commentary by Haruki Murakami. The book is huge as you can see it, and I can say that all the trademark signs of a Murakami book are in this one, and I was able to see each and every one of them. But I personally think the book need not be this huge at all. It talks a lot about Western art and music, which I don't care about, and it seems like the author cares about them a lot and he just tries to push it down our throats through this book, which just felt so irritating and frustrating to me at multiple instances while I was reading the book. That's the main reason why I did not go forward and make a dedicated review for this book also, because having to talk about it just invoked all these kinds of very negative, angry emotions within me, which I felt while reading it also. But by far of all the Murakami books that I've read, this one is the one which comes closest to a closed ending and not just leaving doors open so that we can do whatever we want with the story. I'm planning to read a lot more of Murakami in 2024. Let's just wait and see how it is going to go. But this one need not have been this big. It just gave me the proper feels that I expected out of a Murakami book, and it also frustrated me at instances because of the reasons which I specified before. And it took a long time for me to finish this book because you see it is huge, right? And it takes so much time to just go through the plot because it is very slow. So it ended up being in this list for me. Next, we have kind of a contemporary / romance book, and it is Freckles by Cecilia Ahern. While I saw the name of the author, I just went forward and grabbed this book because I had this faith on the author that this book will be good. It is meant to feel like a feel-good book, but towards the end it was just very depressing for me because we follow our main character here, who is this traffic police kind of person who's 26 years old, and she is living away from her family doing her own job, and she has all these kinds of very negative, not so happy feelings that are happening with her family, and she has been abandoned by her mother from her childhood itself. Because of all these reasons, she is very insecure and she's not very confident about who she is, and she just lets people walk all over her. I thought that when the story began like it would develop into a better one and we could see the main character finding herself and becoming confident. But it did not happen like that at all. Okay, it just felt like a pattern that was repeating again and again from different people throughout her life that we saw inside this book. I did not expect to be depressed after reading the Cecilia Ahern book because from my past experience with her books, they will be sad, they will be having some hard things going on, but at the end of the day, they will just leave us with a sense of hope and optimism towards life, which this book did not end up doing for me. It is not that big, it is a quick read, but I did not expect such a kind of thing from this author. It's not the book's fault, but my own if you ask me. Yet at the end of the day, it made me feel depressed and sad, so it's definitely a disappointing book for me. The next one is a weird-ass book that I read and it was not good. Okay, it was not good. Simply, it was not good, and I recommend you to not go forward and read this. I'm talking about it still because I can see that some people might be interested in reading this kind of stuff. But as a whole, I definitely not suggest anyone to go forward and read it. I might recommend it in the future also because I know it can be to the taste of some people. But for a majority of the population, I can easily say that this book will not be something which they'll be willing to read. And it is The Beauty of the Wolf by Ray Delaney, which is this gender-bent or gender-swapped retelling version of The Beauty and the Beast, where we see our male character who's the beauty and the female character is the beast. And we cannot say that the male character is male also because they seem to be queer throughout the book, but the author keeps on using the pronoun he and him for them, even though it's a bit confusing while we read the book. I don't know if it is intentional or if the author tried something and it turned out to be something else, but as a whole this was not that good because it felt like it had a lot of unnecessary sex scenes which are just dumped in there just in order to make this feel like a romance story, which it did not feel like at the end of the book. There were so many graphic scenes happening, not just in terms of sex, but also in terms of violence. And the writing of the author was also not that great if you ask me. It was very, very dry and did not grip me at any instant. It is a short book, so you can read it fast, but I'd say don't put yourself through it because it's not worth that much time. I read it because it's a standalone fantasy and I might recommend it in the future, but I personally think I could have done better without reading this book. The last book is the ending to a series, and it is not even a good series, okay? It's an okay series. If you're someone who's new to fantasy, if you like romantasy in specific, you can definitely read the series, but this last book is just lazy and bad, and it is Gods and Monsters by Shelby Magunin, which is the last and final book inside the Serpent and Dove trilogy. The first book was good personally for me because I liked the way in which it started, and the second book got a bit, flat towards the middle, and the ending of the second book set up the third book in a really, really good way. But in the third book, the author messed up a lot, okay? It just felt like she was very lazy because she made certain decisions which just felt super unnecessary because they made some of the things that we saw and read for hundreds of pages in the first two books feel obsolete over here because of certain things that she did here. The magic was not that great. The main character was okay, but most of the time she was super irritating. It is basically a series in which a witch hunter and a witch get married to each other, and the witch hunter does not know that the witch is a witch, and when he gets to know that she is a witch and more about himself, what all happens between them and this entire world is the actual plot. Now, if you're a person who has read the Nevernight trilogy and the Empire of the Vampire, and if you like the world building in that, okay, specifically the world building alone in that, you can definitely read the series because it has the same kind of vibe here. It is not as dark as Empire of the Vampire or Nevernight, but it has that same kind of European inspired world which has its own tone of darkness. But this third book, which is this huge, okay, I think it's nearly 600-700 pages long, was definitely not worth the time that I spent reading it. So it is easily one of the disappointing books that I read in 2023. So yes guys, those are the 10 most disappointing books that I read in 2023. And don't forget to let me know your disappointing reads in the comments below because I'd like to know them. And if you've read any of the books that I've talked about in this video, do tell me your opinions of them in the comments so that we can have a discussion. I'll also be making a surprising reads of 2023 and the top 10 books of 2023, which will be coming very soon in the channel. So watch out for them. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.